Generational wealth means amassing a nest egg of possibilities where families can rely on the residual income in order to reach a state of endless utopia and prosperity. And according to my friends at CNBC, it seems that 45% of Americans believe that accumulating wealth through real estate is one of the fastest ways you can accomplish this very objective. It allows you to write chapters of stories of difference throughout the generations of a family tree. It allows you to make plans and believe in the future of what you can achieve if hard work and dedication are at the forefront of your mind. However, there are several different fields of real estate which people can invest in, so it's important to do your homework. No one knows that better than my friend Axel Meierhoefer. He helps people learn and succeed and achieve economic independence through real estate investing. As a retired Air Force officer, Axel started his first company back in 2005 when he focused on consulting, employee skill development, and program management. These same principles and tactics remain in place today, and Axel has grown internationally in his real estate profile and portfolio, which now stands at approximately $2.6 million. Axel has a love of educating others on how to be successful in the field of residential real estate. And he says, as an investor, it's important to know what stream of real estate you want to get in and go from what you know. And Meierhoefer joined me this week to tell me more about real estate investing, how it can achieve generational wealth for many generations to come, and how his business acumen has helped him succeed in all areas of his life, and why he's so passionate about sharing his knowledge and tools with everyone else so that they can reach the same level of prosperity as him. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend, and I'm super excited to learn how you help entrepreneurs and business people succeed in real estate and beyond, my friend. Great to see you this morning, and thank you for a few minutes, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely, my friend, and I know that you help people learn how to succeed and reach their economic independence through real estate investing, my friend, leadership and mindset and productivity. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about the good work that you do and what makes you so fabulous, my friend.
Well, I think what is different or unique in what we're doing is that many years ago, I realized that a lot of people live in areas where if you were to invest exactly in that area, you would probably not get really the performance out of your investment that you're looking for. So we developed a system where you can invest in the areas with a good performance while you're living in areas where you might want to live, but that don't have those kind of properties. We call that out-of-state turnkey investing.
Yeah, I know, my friend, that you started your first company in 2005, which was focused on consulting, employee and skill development, and program management, my friend. So tell me about how you got started in business and how you've evolved to where you are today.
Well, I was first in the Air Force, and when I retired from the Air Force, I got a job at a software company, and that company got their funding, their initial money for the first, I think, like 3 or 4 years from the government to develop software for the Navy. And the program was organized so that after they get closer and closer to having a product, then the government wanted the company to go into the open market. And so I was an executive at that company, and I was not alone. There were 5 other people, and they all said, we should really do something to get ready for the day when the money from the government runs out. And while we put together a plan and we made a suggestion to the owner and stuff, but none of that was accepted. And so we realized, well, if the owners don't want to do the things that are necessary to take the company forward, then it's probably going to die, right? And so, yeah, when our suggestion was rejected, sooner or later, within the next few months, everybody left, and myself included. And then the question was, okay, what do I do next? And the next thing was to say, okay, I could try to find another job, or I can try to work on my own. And that's how the business got started.
Yeah, and Axel, I know that you have a deep passion for education and guiding businesses to succeed, my friend. So tell me, where does your passion and commitment for mentoring and educating others come from?
Well, educating started out in the Air Force because I was an instructor there to teach other people how to fly the planes. So I've always liked the education part. But then I also learned after I started my own business that there's always 2 components. The one is basically, what is the stuff that you need to learn, right? Like, for example, right now, when we help people through mentoring with the real estate investing, most people need to learn what are the main important variables to find a successful and well-performing investment. But then there's also the other component that I didn't initially see, and that is, how do you think about stuff, right? Like, what's your mindset? How do you actually approach it? And that's basically where the mentoring part comes in, and a little bit of coaching too, where, yes, we can learn how to do something, but we also need to learn, how to go about it. And I always try to help people to see that ultimately they need to and should build their own empire, their own thing that they are really in charge of. And most people, when they got out of school and then they started a job, they don't really think as business owners, right? And so it's that both sides, the stuff you need to learn and how to do it, and then the mindset that you should adopt to be successful.
Yeah, and Axel, just before I ask you about your time in the Air Force, I'm curious, how do you define the term or concept generational wealth? What does that mean to you?
Well, I would say generational wealth for me and for what I teach our clients is when you build assets, there can be houses that we help you invest in. Maybe you want to have some gold and silver coins. Maybe you want to hold some Bitcoin. Maybe you want to own some stocks, so have a diversified portfolio, but create the portfolio in such a way that it keeps producing even when you are no longer around, and you can turn it over to your kids and they keep it and it still keeps producing, and then they can turn it over to their kids, to your grandkids basically, and so forth. So from one generation to the next generation to the next generation. And the idea is, especially in real estate, when you invest to generate passive income, a house that you own and that is being rented will generate rental income basically forever if you keep it in good shape and if you keep it up to date. And that's what that means is our generation, me and you, or whoever the investor is, that's the starting generation. But if we do the investments right, then it will last for multiple generations into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And Axel, tell me, I know you served in the Air Force, so thank you for your service, my friend. And I'm curious, how your time in the service impacted your everyday life and how you live your life today. So how did your time in the service impact you, my friend?
Well, one of the things, or there's many, but I mean, one of the things is that you learn a certain level of discipline, discipline for yourself, discipline in the pursuit of any kind of goal or any kind of project or any kind of task. That's just the way the military works. And I've been there for 22 years, so it kind of becomes second nature. The other thing that I saw, and you mentioned that I got really interested in leadership, and what I learned in my time in the military, because I was both in the German Air Force and the US Air Force, is that most people think of military leadership like the drill sergeant we see in the movies, right? But the reality is that if you really want to accomplish complex missions, and if I turn this to today, where I do real estate investing mentoring, that's complex, then you have to earn the respect of the people that you lead, right? And I was always proud that I never really needed to say, you have to do this because I am a higher rank than you. And rather be able to say, here are the reasons why we should do it, and this is what it's going to do for us. And because I had earned the respect of the people that I was in charge of, they were willing to do that, right? So they didn't question the authority, and that's very different than most people think. And I'm very grateful that I basically learned from other leaders that I looked up to that you can lead with authority and respect.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as a business owner, Axel, you tell me that you have began or applying the notion of thinking about profits as it relates to retirement and research, my friend. And you say that owning tangible assets is the best way to accomplish this. So I'm wondering if you can tell me more.
Right. Well, the thing about it is there are a few things, very few, in my opinion, where you can put a little bit of money in and get somebody else to put a lot of more money in, and then you gain all the profit. So let me give you an example for your audience. If we go out into these high-performing areas and we find a house that costs $150,000, then you and I or any of our clients can put $30,000 of our own money in to buy it, and the bank is going to give us the other $120,000. Then we rent that house, and our tenants are paying $1,400, $1,500 a month in rent, and that money is going to pay for the mortgage, pay for the insurance, pay for the taxes, pay for the reserves, and a little bit, $200-$300 comes into our pocket. So if you fast forward like 20 years, for example, you own this house for 20 years. Now that mortgage is most likely going to be paid off. Now we get the vast majority of the rent, right? And we only ever made that $30,000 investment. And if, for example, think about this for a moment. If this house gains in value 5% in a year, and I know sometimes it's 3 and sometimes it's 6, but just for easy calculation, let's say it's 5%, right? So that's $7,500. And you put in $30,000, or I put in $30,000, right? That's 25% return on investment on our money in that 1 year. And that's not even counting the rent. So the real important thing for your audience or anybody who is thinking about this to understand is in almost every other thing that you want to invest in, you have to put in 100% of your money. If you buy Apple stock or General Motors stock or whatever, you want to buy $1,000 worth of stock, you have to pay $1,000. If you say, oh no, I want to buy gold, I want to buy $1,000 worth of gold, you have to put in $1,000. But if you say, I want to buy $1,000 worth of a house, you only have to put in $200. And that makes it so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I know that you've developed a real estate portfolio that's surpassed $2.5 million. I think it's up to $2.6 million now. And you've done that in part because of government support, my friend. And I know that you have thoughts on how the government can help us build wealth. So I'm wondering if you can share that with me, because I know your real estate portfolio is still growing, and I want to know some of the lessons you've learned as well.
Right. Like, I mean, the first lesson is the government wants private individuals like you and me to own real estate so it can be rented out for housing of people. Because obviously not everybody can own a house. People, either they're early in their development or in their career, whatever the reason may be, so they want to rent, right? So the government is obviously interested that everybody who lives in the country has a chance to find a place to live. And if you think about it, the government is not really in the position to provide housing for everybody. So one thing that the government wants is to provide shelter or housing. And if we do this, they give us mortgages that are government insured, right? So if the mortgage company fails, we are still safe as investors because the mortgage is government insured. The second thing is, because the government wants us to provide housing to the public, they say a house as an investment is like a machine that you buy for your factory. So the house that we invest in, we can write off every year a little piece of the price that we paid. So in our $150,000 house example, we can write off about $5,000 in our tax return every year for 27 years. So that's the second thing that the government says. Now, the third thing is, for the taxation, we are allowed to put some of the interest that we pay for the mortgage into our tax return. We can use any of the repairs that need to be made on the house that we own as expenses in our tax return. And if we now, let's say we bought this house, Kevin, you and I, we bought a house together, we had it for 10 years, and then we found a better house that might perform even better than the first one. Then you and I can say, okay, we sell house number one and we buy house number two. And obviously in those 10 years, house number one has gained in value. Let's say we paid $150,000 and now it's worth $200,000. Now, in any other investment, if you made $50,000 profit, the government would say, you got to pay me taxes on your profit. But in real estate, the government says, if you sell one house that you rented and you buy another that you're also going to rent, then we are willing to forgive you the tax. You don't have to pay any taxes on the profits for now. Just exchange the old house to a new house. So those are just a few examples where the government is basically actively helping us as real estate investors. And I'm not aware that the government is doing that in any other area. Now, the other, with a little bit of a chuckle and cheeky thought, they help us in an additional way, even though most people don't like it. You know that they keep printing money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what happens is, each little, I always say, these little green pieces of paper have less and less purchasing power, right? So in a way, they are depreciating the value of every one of those little $20 or $100 bills over time. But we are always paying the same amount of money into our mortgage every month. Right? You get a 30-year mortgage and it's $900 a month for 30 years. Now those nine $100 bills have a certain purchasing power now when you sign up on the mortgage. But think about how much you can still buy for these $900 in 20 or 30 years from now. So in a way, the mortgage, because the government keeps printing money, gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Right? Yeah. So those are just a few examples to tell you and your audience how the government is actually helping us. Some of it is intentional, and some of it, like the loss of purchasing power, is obviously not intentional, but it still helps us. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Axel, tell me, how do you define the concept of a business mentor, and what qualities do you think a quality business mentor possesses?
Well, for one, from a quality perspective, I believe a good business mentor and coach needs to be good at listening, because you want to really understand the nuances of every person that says, I want you to be my mentor and my coach. Now, the other part is, the way I define it is basically to say, if you were to go out, if you, Kevin, today were to decide, I want to become a real estate investor, residential out-of-state real estate investor, it is very likely that it's going to take you many years to get really good at it. And it's also very likely that during those learning years, you're going to make a bunch of mistakes. So I define mentoring, or business mentoring in that context, as I'm helping you to do all the right things, avoid all the wrong things, so you can achieve your goals much faster than it took me to achieve them, because I had to learn it. I had to make those mistakes, learn from those mistakes, but now I know. And so what took me, let's say, 5 or 6 years, takes you maybe 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Axel, I always live my life through the prism of that life is a constant game of learning. So I'm wondering your thoughts on why business people and entrepreneurs should always be open to increasing their educational knowledge base and learning something new. Why do you think it's important for business people to be continual learners?
Well, I think there are 2 aspects to that. The first one is, you want to obviously meet and exceed the expectations of your clients and customers, right? So what do I mean by that? Let's imagine there were a business owner who didn't learn, and so he or she is still sending out fax. They expect you to send fax. They expect you to pay everything with a check. They expect you to write letters, right? This is how it used to be 20 years ago. If I were a client or you were a client, we would say, this is so old-fashioned, this is so inefficient, I don't want to work with this person. Now take, alternatively, somebody who is going with the times, right? They used to have a fax. Now they do everything with email and DM and WhatsApp and Zoom, right? So that's meeting the customer expectations. That's the one side. The other side, I believe, for continuous learning is that the field that you choose to be in, like in my case, residential real estate investing, constantly morphs and changes and develops. Like it used to be that you had to basically have a company in the state that you were actually wanting to invest in. Now the rules allow that you can have one company in some place in the country and you can invest everywhere in every state, right? It used to be that you needed to go and visit a house that you wanted to possibly buy. Now you can have a video tour. But you want to learn, is a video tour good enough to make an investment decision, right? It used to be that you basically spoke to your own bank and they decided if you get a mortgage or not. Nowadays, you have nationwide operators and they can give you a mortgage everywhere, but their application process is completely different. So if you imagine if somebody were not to constantly keep up both with the technology, with the customer expectations, but also how is my market actually changing and evolving and offering more opportunities, you would just fall behind and everybody else would get the business, but you wouldn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And Axel, I know that you've been in the business and investing game for a while, and I know that you've made decisions that have been fruitful, and you've learned from mistakes as well. So I'm curious about your concept and process in building relationships and how that's helped you sort of create a pathway to economic independence. What are your thoughts there?
I would say, and most people are probably going to be surprised about that, I would really say my biggest point is be very direct, be very honest, and be very transparent. If you can put out right from the get-go what you're looking for, what you're expecting, why you're looking for it, and what you bring to the table, right? Then I have learned that avoids all kinds of misunderstandings and stuff like that. So nowadays, when I talk to somebody who is providing money, like a bank or a mortgage lender or stuff like that, I tell them exactly what I look for my clients and myself. Or if I work with a new provider who is building new houses that they want to sell to my community, I tell them exactly what needs to be on the table, what they need to do, what we're looking for. And sometimes, Kevin, the one thing that I've learned through that is every once in a while I run into somebody, like just recently, I had someone I talked to who is building new properties, purpose built to rent out. And I told him what I'm looking for, and he rattled down a long list of things that he needs for a relationship to work. And within, I would say, 20 minutes, we realized what he is looking for and what I'm looking for doesn't match. It just doesn't fit. So basically, without any fight, without any kind of negative emotions and stuff, within 20, 30 minutes, we could determine, hey, what you're offering, the product is great, but how you're doing it and what I'm looking for just doesn't fit. And that's for me a really big lesson that I want to convey as an answer to your question. If you can get yourself to be open, direct, honest, and transparent, then you have the biggest chance to have a really solid foundation to build that relationship on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Axel, I'm wondering if you can give me a sort of a roadmap to success for real estate investing in terms of creating sustainable success. What do you think is the key there?
Well, I believe the key is that you have to make up your mind, and hopefully with the help of a mentor, which part of this massively big real estate market do you really want to get into? Right? I like the analogy, if you look, and I don't know if people can relate to that, to car racing, right? There's NASCAR and there's Formula One and there is rally racing and those kind of things. And if somebody comes to me and says, I want to be in car racing, the first thing you would say and I would say is, well, what kind of racing do you want to do? And I'm saying the same thing for success in real estate investing, but in general, success in investing. You want to figure out which particular part of this vast investing market, and even in real estate, you could be in what we do, residential real estate. You could be in apartment buildings. You could be in coin laundries. You could be in storage units. You could be in trailer parks. You could be in commercial buildings. You could be in lending. And I can go on and on and on and on, right? So it's important to sit down and say, which part of this massive market do I want to focus on? And then I, as a mentor and expert in that market, in that residential real estate market, ought to say, then I can really help you good. If you just say, I want to invest in real estate, I would have to first say, what kind? And if you say, oh, I like apartments, well, then I'm not your guy. Or if you say, I like tiny homes, okay, great, but I'm not your guy, right? So for somebody to help a potential investor really become successful, it has to be specific what you really want to do. And I obviously, when I have conversations with people who just say, I want to generally invest in real estate, I have a free complimentary conversation to tell them what I do, and then they can determine, is that the part of the market that I want to be in?
And Axel, from a societal perspective, I'm curious to get your thoughts on what do you think are the key factors to bring us all together. I started this podcast because I looked at the world and I said there has to be more that brings us together rather than tearing us apart. So I'm curious, from a societal perspective, when you look at the state of today's world, what's the one binding factor that you still believe, if we search hard enough for it, can bring us all together?
Well, for one, we talked a little bit about success, and obviously when people that are successful come together, they typically have fun, and it's great, and we like each other. But if you take this in a little more specific, I can tell you, and you can ask anybody in the residential real estate investing field, the community of the people working within this field, whether they are investors or they're property managers or they're builders or so forth, is a really relative, in comparison to the rest of the world and the rest of the economy, a very friendly community. And I believe the main reason is because everybody wants to help each other to ultimately own as many properties as possible, right? It's not, I'm envious of Kevin if Kevin buys this house that I might have been interested in, because I know there are 3 more houses on the same street that I can buy or in the same community. So I'm much better off, and this is very unusual. I want you and your audience to be aware of. From a societal perspective, I have often asked myself, why is the media making it sound like real estate investing, especially residential real estate investing, where you outright own the houses, is something that only rich people can do? And I really believe part of the reason why this is constantly basically portrayed in the media as something for a select few people is because somehow this nice community of people who help each other to accomplish success is envious, or the media is envious about that community. I always, when we start first talking to people, I always ask them, what are the things that you have heard that make this hard? And what they tell me is stuff like, well, it's risky, or I don't have enough money, or I have to clean the toilets and go out in the middle of the night because the faucet is leaking, or tenants don't pay, and all this kind of stuff, right? And when I tell them how my portfolio works, that I'm literally have a meeting with my property managers once a month for about an hour. So I'm spending about 2 to 3 hours a month to manage my portfolio. Then people are typically all blown away. And why is that? Because I have these relationships that you touched on, Kevin, with the builders, with the property managers, with the lenders, with the insurance companies, and our clients have those same relationships too. So this whole myth that the media is building around investing is false, right? And I'm part of what I'm always doing, and why I love to come on podcasts like yours, is to try to dispel those myths. The big thing that I would say anybody should do, especially if you're relatively young, is see how you can get started so that your portfolio is like my portfolio, but not when you reach my age, but when you're 35 or 40.
I gotcha. And, Axel, I'm also curious to ask you about creating the right mindset to make difficult or big decisions and eliminating fear. What do you think is the key to making great decisions under a great mindset? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I believe in an increasing amount, we live in a world where almost everything is associated with fear, with the emotion of fear. We are supposed to be afraid of fill in the blanks, almost anything. And what that leads to from a mindset perspective is that a lot of people adopt a mindset of a victim. It's not my fault that I don't have enough money. It's not my fault that I don't have investments. It's not my fault that I don't have a job. It's not my fault that I don't have health insurance. It is not my fault that I can't afford the stuff I want to buy in the store, and on and on and on and on. And what I'm saying and what I'm trying to do with my mentoring and coaching for our clients is I want to get you, and I actually really created a mindset manual that helps you, and obviously other stuff that I offer, but helps you to go from this position of a victim to the position of a creator, where you take charge of your own future. Now, that doesn't mean you never make a mistake, but if you can switch from everything is happening to me and make it, I take charge and I take action to create the future that I want, you're ahead of like 90% of the rest of the people.
Yeah, and Axel, I wanted to also ask you about analysis and paralysis and how we can avoid really over analyzing things and making decisions. So how do we avoid analysis and paralysis, my friend?
Well, I mean, one thing that I do is I like to use analogies, right? Like if you for a moment imagine you're back at the time when you had to decide what should be my first job out of college or out of high school. And now, instead of saying, okay, this took me like maybe a year or half a year or so, imagine you were analyzing and analyzing and analyzing what potential jobs you could take for 10 years. You would be completely broke and bankrupt and never really become anything. But when we want to make investments, there's a tendency to say, I need to know everything before I decide. And in no other place in our evolution as a human being do we ever have 100% guarantee that things come out exactly the way we previously planned. So analysis paralysis is basically trying to serve the idea that you could know everything you need to avoid any mistake possible. And I'm always encouraging people to say, if you make an investment and you were expecting, let's say, to make $300 a month in your pocket every month, and in the end you basically make $50, you're still way better off than anybody who didn't do anything, is just looking at Zillow or at the internet and looking at pictures. So the thing is, in my experience, we are trending towards analysis paralysis because we feel that we are alone in the decision making. And that's why, I'm grateful that you brought this up. Find somebody that you trust, where you can see this person has the experience. This person, like me, has 10 properties, has bought them and sold them and helped other people to get many more properties than I have. There is a track record. I've actually done it and I'm still doing it. Find somebody like that. Because when you can stand on the shoulders of somebody like that, the probability that you make a mistake is much, much smaller. And when that's the case, then you can also make a decision. It doesn't mean that you will never make a mistake. But by having somebody who helps you to focus on the important stuff, you can get out of that analysis paralysis and actually start taking action.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Axel, my final question for you this morning has to do with legacy, my friend, and how you want your personal and professional legacy to be defined, my friend.
Well, personally, I hope that my daughter at some point will basically take what we have created, my wife and I, and like we spoke about generational wealth, and is going to keep benefiting from it and maybe grow it. And then we have a grandson now that he will be then the follow-up generation to take it over from her. So that would be on the personal side. On the professional side, I would like for people, to say, if I'm not around anymore, the guy was genuinely interested in our well-being and our success.
Absolutely. And Axel, finally, tell me, if people want to get connected with you, my friend, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, you can go to idealwealthgrower.com and you find like buttons to set up a call as a free complimentary call where we can talk about what you're looking for and if we are a good match, like I described earlier. So that's probably the easiest way.
Absolutely. Well, Axel, I really want to thank you for the good work that you do to move the needle of progress forward and generate generational wealth through real estate investing and everything in between, my friend. And I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me this morning. It's most appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin, for having me.